London time, and very quickly, just to tell you that we will start now panel number 1, and it is chaired by Dr. Per Gahrton, a Swedish sociologist and former Swedish MP and MEP Greens. And he is the first on the list actually to start, and is also the chair. And his talk is called Nawal El-Saadawi, Feminist of the Arabs. So go ahead, Doctor.
Yes, hello everybody. I am Per Gahrton, a Swedish sociologist and an old friend of Nawal. I will now try to share screen with you so you can see my slides. That should be the point of it. Well, is that okay? Do you see my slides?
It says he has started screen sharing.
Yes.
But we do not see slides, or at least I do not see it.
You do not see slides?
Oh, okay. Now we see. Yes.
You see it?
Yes. Yes.
Very well. So,
okay.
Here you see that I am a friend of Nawal since long, and here is my wife, Professor Rude Dalarup, who has taught me a lot about feminism because she is professor of politics and gender at Stockholm University and Roskilde University in Denmark. I have a long story with Egypt. I wrote a book about 1987, Egypt and Arab Democracy. Unfortunately, the publisher forgot to put the question mark after the title because Egypt was, of course, no full-fledged democracy in 1987 when this book was published, and I had a lot of problems for this omission. I first met Nawal in a way very close to the person Professor Amin met on a plane, as she told us, because I met Nawal through this book, El-Marra wal-Gins, Women and Sex, which I came across in Beirut in the early 70s. And my translations of words on the first few pages say a lot about what was new and shocking to me, and at the same time represent the core of the book, like khitan, circumcision, aifa, chastity, ism, sin, nagasa, uncleanliness. And I was really shocked by what I learned at that time. In her introduction, Nawal writes, some died about those victims of khitan. Some died a real physical death during abortion or circumcision, or bearing under bad circumstances, or being killed for not showing blood to prove virginity. Some died psychologically or socially. And one effect of that book was that she lost her her post at the Ministry of Health. You see here the cover of the book, I hope. Well, it doesn't work very. Yeah, this is the cover of the book, El-Marra wal-Gins. And here you have my translations of these ugly words that shocked me so much. As was told earlier here, Nawal was put into prison by Sadat in 1981. And then she wrote this famous book, Memoirs from a Women's Prison. She quotes one prostitute in this prison, Duba, who says, behind every woman who has entered prison, there's a real son of a bitch, father, husband, brother, uncle, cousin, any man. And the news that Sadat was killed at the 6th of October parade that year was greeted in the prison by jubilations. The fundamentalists whirled around without niqab, and the left-wingers kneeled and thanked God, according to Nawal. On November 25th, Nawal was brought to the new president, Hosni Mubarak, and he clasped her hand and uttered, as she says, frank, sincere words. After some days, all of them were released, but Mubarak's nice words about freedom were never followed by deeds. And here we have the book, The Memoirs from a Women's Prison. Nawal has, of course, a very clear ideology, and she has summarized that many, many times. Once at the conference in Cairo in 2002, which I attended, she said, systems change from kingdoms to republics or to people's democracies or to neoliberal democracies, but the essence remains the same. Power and riches for the few, and poverty, deprivation, a little freedom for the many. Many were shocked when Nawal launched herself as candidate for the presidency in May 2005. It was taken seriously by many, but, she says, an important member of the ruling party said I was mad. She was, of course, not mad, but also among Egyptian intellectuals, there was some discussion about her. In May 2009, in one of her columns in El-Masri al-Yawm, she told of a conversation with the famous author Yusuf Idris. Nawal was wondering how he and other intellectuals with access to the major media often could tell that they had received calls from ministers, even the prime minister and the president, praising their articles and promising to fulfill their demands. This never happened to Nawal. Well, dear Nawal, Yusuf Idris taught her, in our type of society, authors must build bridges to the rulers, which was not, of course, the way Nawal used to work. Well, Yusuf Idris got a famous post stamp because he acted as he did. I don't think, to my knowledge, Nawal still has no postage stamp in Egypt. She became world famous during the Tahrir revolution, but it was a problematic development for her at the same time. On the 25th of January 2011, she wrote about the Tunisian revolution, not knowing that the Egyptian one would start the same day. And she asked, how many times have women participated in popular revolutions? And when the new government has been stabilized, the rights of women have been neglected. On February 8th, same year, the Egyptian revolution had started. Nawal was present on Maidan al-Tahrir. She was convinced that the Egyptian revolution has started a new social era. But already on 22nd of March, she was worried. Is it possible to crush popular revolutions, she asked. And on November 15th, she claimed that nothing fundamental had been changed in the corrupt patriarchal capitalist system. And finally, on 13th of March 2012, she claimed that the present rulers, the military, the civilian politicians, the religious groups are responsible for having aborted the revolution. And here we have Nawal beside the book she wrote about the Arab revolutions, Al-Thawrat al-Arabiya. When I met her in 2010, already before the revolution, she considered stopping writing her columns because the editors of Masri al-Yawm interfered with her texts. I advised her to go on writing because I know very well that editors always interfere. And I am happy she decided to go on. Today, in 2020, she is writing regular columns in both Al-Ahram and Al-Masri al-Yawm. Here we have one from 23rd of September this year on male polygamy, and from Masri al-Yawm only a week ago, less than a week ago, about sex and poverty. As was mentioned before, today, Nawal is a secular activist, and as she also told about in the interview we heard with her. And once she was victim of a very disgraceful insult in a TV show. and the editors of Al-Ahram at first were afraid and refused to publish the column she wrote to defend herself. But after some time, the editors recovered and published a long criticism of the many enemies of Nawal El-Saadawi. And the author of the article, Hazim Rifat, claimed that Egypt ought to be proud of Nawal El-Saadawi, and he suggested that she might be even greater personality than the two Egyptian winners of Nobel Prizes, Naguib Mahfouz, who got it in literature in 1988, and Ahmed Zuwail, who got it in chemistry in 1999. Because, Hazim Rifat wrote, she has helped hundreds of thousands of girls to improve their lives, not least by her long struggle against khitan of girls. And here we have the famous Naguib Mahfouz, of course, with some of his books. About khitan, in the summer of 2020, in a column, Nawal movingly recalls how her mother, at her deathbed, asked Nawal to forgive her for having allowed this crime, khitan, against her daughter. And Nawal comments that, here we have it now. I just lost it. Now, yeah, Nawal comments, and here we have this column, Al-Khitan laysa min ad-din. Circumcision does not come from religion. So khitan, the fight against khitan, as was mentioned before, has been almost number one in her long struggle. One of the first novels is about a very tough feminist, an imprisoned prostitute, Firdaus, who is awaiting execution for murder. Firdaus accepts to see Nawal after some hesitation, tells her the sad story of her life and her final flight into luxury prostitution. Firdaus says, almost like the prostitute I mentioned earlier, all the men I did get to know, every single man of them has filled me with but one desire, to lift my hand and bring it smashing down on his face. But because I am a woman, I have never had the courage to lift my hand. But finally, Firdaus mobilizes her courage and kills a man who demands to become her pimp. And Nawal writes, when she travels back to her apartment after the meeting with Firdaus, she thinks Firdaus has been braver than I have been. And here we have the cover of that famous book. One very common trait in Nawal's stories is that she's ridiculing religious men. One example is Maut Rajul al-Wahid al-Ard, which means the death of the only man in the world. Another example is the fall of the Imam, which tells the story of Bint Allah, daughter of God, a beautiful, illegitimate child whose father is the Imam. Nawal sometimes has an approach similar to that of the Danish author Hans Christian Andersen, with his famous tale about the emperor's new clothes. Clothes that don't exist, and in fact leaves the poor guy naked, a fact that, however, is denied by everybody until a child shouts the obvious truth that he wears nothing at all. Nawal is the truth-revealing child, seeing what others refuse to see, although they actually see it. She dismantles the hypocrisy and stupidity of the patriarchal religious men in power. One famous play was God Resigns at the summit meeting, and Al-Azhar even leveled apostasy charges against that play. The main characters of the play are Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, Radwan, keeper of the gates of paradise, Isis, Eve, Virgin Mary, Bint Allah, 20 years old, Satan, and God, Allah. The prophets are questioning the decisions by God on Palestine, on mass killing, and so on. The women are even more critical. Why should Abraham kill his son? Why should men have their foreskin cut off? And so on. The Most High God is losing his beliefs, and says that it's time for the world to continue progressing without a God and without a Satan also, because this has created separation between body and spirit and between men and women. And so first Satan resigns and then also God resigns. All this created an uproar, of course, in Egypt and around. And here we have the cover of the book in Arabic, اللي يقدم استقالته في اجتماع القمة. And then we have here another book that was very famous also, 12 Women in a Cell. And so Nawal has managed to show the very complicated image of the population of Egypt, all ages, all professions, all religions, all geographical areas. And this shows that Egypt is not such a unidimensional Muslim state as many believe. It's much more complicated. Then came the dramatic events of the 2011 revolution and its aftermath, and then finally the ousting of President Morsi and the regime of the Muslim Brotherhood. And on June 30th, 2013, Nawal wrote, 34 million youth, men and women, went out into the streets and squares. They wanted to expel all who would use religion for economic and political gain and to oust Morsi. To Nawal, Islamism has always been the greater evil, an opinion which made her side with the Tamarrud, the revolt against the Islamist regime, and support the military intervention to topple Morsi in the summer of 2018. But as a matter of fact, she was not the only one to do this. Most Egyptian intellectuals did the same. Another of my old Egyptian friends, Iqbal Baraka, chair of Egyptian pen and pamphlets against veils, demanded me to sign a petition supporting General Assisi. And Ala al-Aswani, author of the globally famous House of Yaqubian, maintained that the massacre of Islamists at the Radawiya Mosque was unavoidable and stated that Egypt was heading for democracy. And the president of Egyptian Authors Union, Mohammed Salmawi, accused the West of being more concerned about terrorists than about Copts. Yeah, even Huda Abdel Nasser, the eldest daughter of President Gamal Abdel Nasser, supported General Sisi, comparing him with Charles de Gaulle. So when Nawal was forced to choose between two evils, religious or military authoritarianism, she, like most of the secular Egypt, preferred to risk a military regime, which after all she was used to since 1952. And here we have Ala al-Aswani, one of those who supported the regime of Assisi, but it must be said today, I believe, he is in exile in the USA. One of the latest books of Nawal, I don't think I haven't found a translation. It was in English, it should be Memories of an 85-year-old Girl. And in this book, she's very tough on veils. The niqab is a kind of terror and murder of the personality of a woman and her humanity and honor. Here we have the cover of that book, Mufakirat Tiflat al-Khamisa wa Thamanin. In this book, she lists all the times she has been accused of heresy. When she wrote that kissing of the black stone at Kaaba was tradition even before Islam, she was acquitted. When she said that God has no body and thus cannot have a sex and cannot be he. When she observed that khitan has no relation to Islam. When she protested against the acceptance of 4 wives for men. When she criticized the racist patriarchal system. When her enemies demanded forced divorce and withdrawal of her Egyptian citizenship, but she was acquitted in 2008. And when her daughter Muna wrote that children should have not only the name of the fathers, but also of their mothers. And they were both acquitted. And now there is a law giving the right to children with an unknown father to wear the name of the mother. In her first part of her autobiography is called The Daughter of ISIS. It's no coincidence, because Nawal suggests, as she writes, that the philosophy of Nut and Isis and Maat was more progressive than that of Plato and Aristotle, because the Egyptian goddesses did not separate the body from the brain and the soul and society. And she asks, what has happened since the time of Isis with humanity to make a female head something shameful that must be concealed under a veil? And here we have the cover of that very important book. Finally, it was mentioned by Professor Amin that Nawal has got a lot of prizes, but there is at least one prize she has not yet got. In a review article of her latest novel, in Arabic it's called Inahwa Dam, which is This is Blood. It was translated into Swedish, but I think not into English. So there was a article about it in a Swedish daily in 2014, which says, with the revolution writers, that is, as it was called in Swedish, with the revolution writers, Nawal El-Saadawi has given us one of the great feminist novels. This overview of the Egyptian revolution had to be written by a woman, a steady candidate for the Nobel Prize. Now it is really time for that, the major Swedish daily Dagens Nyheter wrote in April 2014. Unfortunately, it has not yet become time for that. It may be, because the importance of Nawal El-Saadawi for the struggle for women's rights against patriarchy, especially in the Arab world, has been immense. The struggle has mainly, as we know, been pursued by literary works of a quality that would justify the literary Nobel Prize. But, however, the work of Nawal undoubtedly could also qualify her for the Nobel Peace Prize, which has often been given to activists who have fought not only for peace, but also for justice. And here we have the cover of that book in Swedish, and I will end with that, and I can promise you that I will do my best to convince the Swedish Academy, which has not the best reputation of the world for the time being, that finally, in the year when Nawal will be 90 next year, they will really do what the Swedish newspaper demanded already in 2014, to give her at least one of the Nobel Prizes. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Can you all hear me? Perfect timing. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You can hear me, but I wonder if the others also can hear me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, that's wonderful. Okay, well, perfect timing, and we have about 5 minutes. But before that, let me pick up where you left off. By all means, let us really and truly consider in the next, day or so. We have today and we have tomorrow, and we can have a discussion of this during the concluding ceremonies. Let us discuss seriously supporting a call for Nawal El-Saadawi to be given the Nobel Prize, either for literature or for peace, and for her activism and struggle on behalf of women and human rights. I think that would be absolutely wonderful for us to adopt such a call. But of course, I would leave it up to you, so that if we can have this decision tomorrow, and then we can actually write a statement, and I personally would be happy to translate it. Well, to compose it into English, we translate it into Arabic, and we can also translate it into French, and we'll give it to our dear friend, Dr. Per, to translate it into Swedish, and we send it to the Nobel Prize Committee. So, what do you think of this idea?
I think, of course, it's a very good idea, and they need some good ideas in the Nobel Prize Committee.
And the wonderful thing about what you said is that you said إنه الدم, the novel is actually Nawal El-Saadawi gave me a copy of it, and she asked me to translate it into English. So I'm very happy to see that you made a mention of this, and you said something about a Swedish translation.
It is already, as I found, translated into Swedish, but
yes, I know, but not into English.
No, that's
and
more
the
important.
Last time I saw her, she gave me a copy of it, and she said, if you could translate this into English. And of course, you all know that since then we had this COVID-19 and all this that played havoc with our schedule. All right. Very good. So if you have, we have few minutes that people can ask you a question or ask you to comment on something briefly, and then you yourself will start by introducing the second presenter in your panel, who is Professor Hani Ali Saeed and Mr. Ibrahim. I think we have two, Mr. Ibrahim Sayyid Fawzi. Okay, so a couple of minutes to ask Dr. Per a question, or if he would like to comment further on any aspect of what he said.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, introduce yourself very quickly.
I'm Dr. Nagwa, a professor at the Faculty of Arts and Humanities, the British University in Egypt.
Very good.
Thank you so much, Professor Per, for your excellent presentation. I just would like to ask you, with regards to the 2011 revolution, you referred to it as that it was dismantled or it was crushed, and you mentioned that the 2000. So it's as though that all the people who came out asking for the 2013, if we were to refer to it as the second revolution, it's as though their views are not taken into consideration. Just because you refer that it's military, and but what if this is what the people and the mass want?
Well, this is very complicated, as you know, very complicated. I have discussed with Nawal several times what happened in 2013. And I don't think that she and many others of the Egyptian intellectuals really could foresee what would happen afterwards. Now, 7 years later, we don't know a lot more. And some, as I said, El-Saadawi has chosen to go into exile because of problems at home. Nawal has chosen another way, and I understand her very much. She is very critical still in her columns, and now she has, as I showed, columns, not every week, but every month, once or twice, in both the major newspapers of Egypt. And she is pursuing very tough campaigns against patriarchy and against everything. Of course, she is not attacking the president. That's a price she has to pay for this position. But that she does not want to go into exile once more in her life, I support that, and I can understand it. But I repeat, the situation in Egypt is complicated, to say the least of it.
But I mean, I am an Egyptian intellectual, and I am living in Egypt. And with all due respect, I don't believe this is the case. I see development around me. I see, I mean, endeavors to modernize Egypt. I see that we are going towards we're on the right track for development, and I don't see any whether patriarchy is present or not. It will take time to be erased, but I'm a mother of two young men and one grown-up daughter, two architects and an economist. And I see how my sons treat their wives, and how the roles, the traditional role of a female and a man, this has changed drastically.
Okay.
And so yes, go.
Okay,
sorry.
Doctor.
Yes.
I think that the idea is you made the idea very clearly, and please, by all means, jot down some of these notes. All of you should do that, so that we can also go back to them whenever we have a chance. I may actually allow some time during the breaks. We don't have to disappear during the breaks. So soon we will have actually a lunch hour of about an hour and a half according to my schedule, and during which we can actually communicate. You don't have to leave the screen. Okay. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, of course. Of course.